Welcome to our masterclass on discovering the quickest way to find connection with your spouse. Now, we all get married because we want to do life with our best friend. We want a shoulder to cry on. We want to make new memories, go on adventures, raise a family together, and of course, grow old and live out our happily ever after. And so we know that you desperately want that connection with your spouse, whether you're hurting or whether you're happy, and we're going to give that to you right now.
And here's the issue. We all feel connected during those dating years. But once we get married, the years go by, we get distracted, we get busy, and we can fall into a place where we're just kind of living parallel lives. We get busy with the kids, our careers, the mortgage, the bills, and these routines that keep us disconnected. And if you're in that season, probably what you're feeling right now is the kids can feel more important than your spouse. Date nights are sporadic, if they're even happening. Maybe you can't even remember the last time you got away, just the two of you. Sex feels robotic. And the new norm is that you're living like roommates. You're not feeling connected as you once were. What's crazy is how easy that happened with us. Was once the glow of the wedding kind of wore off, we got into our routines. We just got into our own little world. And it wasn't like anything on purpose. We didn't deliberately do anything. It was actually the things that we didn't do
that got us into trouble.
Because I didn't have the tools to bring us back together, there was a growing sense of frustration.
Absolutely. And I think for me, I remember feeling duped in our marriage. Like, wait, this isn't what I signed up for. Like, you used to make all this effort. You used to be romantic. You used to take us out on date nights and plan these things. And you kind of got like lazy and just kind of got busy with work. Like you said, distracted the kids and everything. But these things happen where you're like, well, we were once connected. And that's, I think, the good news is if you were once connected, you can find it again.
If you are feeling disconnected, one of the major emotions that we hear from a lot of people is this feeling of being lonely inside of marriage. And it's one thing to be lonely and single. It's a different thing to be lonely inside of your marriage with a house full of people, but to feel that level of disconnection because it's everything that marriage is not supposed to be. You got married to be a team. You got married to feel connected. Like you said, a shoulder to cry on, a teammate. And now you're experiencing loneliness. And what's really, really scary today is that Americans are feeling more lonely than they ever had. In fact, in 2023, there was a research poll that went out. It said 1 out of every 2 Americans, 50% of Americans felt lonely.
That's a lot of people.
And it's impacting their health more than smoking or diabetes. So it's this loneliness epidemic that we're experiencing is really starting to become on the rise, and it's impacting mental health, physical health, and the way we show up for relationships.
And that disconnection breeds the loneliness. That's what happens if you don't fix the disconnection. So the good news is this.
Bring us
up.
Yes,
I know, right? Like downer, I know. The good news is this. We're going to give you the quick wins, the easy ways to get that connection with your spouse, no matter how busy you are. If you're like Megan Casey, I've got 5 kids, I work full time, we got you. Now, everything we're going to cover in this video is actually in our Marriage 365 app. And in our app, we get to do deep dives on things like how to rebuild trust and how to affair-proof your marriage. How to handle sexual rejection, a very common issue for couples that they don't really know how to handle that when your spouse...
Four-step apology.
The four-step apology.
Really repair a relationship.
Boundaries with in-laws, ways to de-stress. So we have all these different things, and it's an incredible resource. So 2 things we want to talk about before we give you those quick ways to connect. And the first one is this. Curiosity. And what is curiosity, babe, and what does it look like in marriage?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Megan. I'm about to tell you. Curiosity is a strong desire to know or learn something or someone. Okay, and I want to repeat that because it's really important because we talk about big words like curiosity and go, I think I know what that means. But the word desire is really at the spark of curiosity.
I have this desire to know this person or to know this thing more on a deeper level.
And desire is the energy that fuels our pursuit of someone. So think about that. Desire. think about when you first met your spouse, the desire to know. I was so curious to get to know who you were.
Yeah.
I barely remembered your name because I was so nervous. So I was very curious about your name several times, but I had a desire to learn and to know about you.
Yeah.
And when you think about connection, curiosity is at the core. It's like a pillar point for connection. Now, okay, 2 years ago, I want to share the story. 2 years ago, I did my first cold plunge.
Oh, here we go.
Here I go.
Well,
and
this is a good story for curiosity. All right.
And I mean, it was an amazing experience. It was challenging, but there was so much like energy released, and it was so crazy how I felt in my body.
Oh, I remember when you came home and you told me all about it for hours and hours. Yes.
So I was curious about the health benefits because I started hearing more people doing, saunas and ice baths and stuff like that. And it was the desire that was deep inside me, that curiosity that, I listened to podcasts, talked to friends, articles. I even purchased my own cold plunge.
Yes.
And now I enjoy because I learned so much. I was very curious about the process of what your body goes through cold exposure. Then now I like to share that with other people.
Yeah. And when people ask like, well, why do you do this? I mean, you have your long list of reasons why and the health benefits.
That's going to be our next video. Okay?
But it's because you were curious.
Curious. Yeah. Curiosity drove me to learn and master something.
In marriage, being curious, it shows that you care about your spouse. It helps you learn about their thoughts, their desires, their fears, their concerns, their dreams. It rebuilds trust. Like when you know that your spouse is actually curious about you, you're like, oh, I can like trust you. I think it's, again, a way to connect. I think it also is a great way to show your love and your continuous like love for each other. Like you didn't just learn about your spouse when you were dating and then like you're done learning about them, but it's like this ongoing learning.
Yeah. Well, we all want to be desired.
We all want to be desired.
That's sexual attraction, desire. Yeah. That's huge.
Okay. So back on August 25th, 2001, this really cute guy came up to me and I was at a coffee shop. Yes, the cute guy was Casey. And I was sitting next to my college roommate and he asked me my name. You just brought that up. And from there, right, it started with a question and he got curious and we started talking that night. And it was like, oh, we realized we went to the same college, oh, what's your major and where do you live and where are you from? And, just kind of
Tell them about your family.
Yeah, like we didn't go too deep right away, but like there was this interest, right? And then you're like, okay, I find this guy interesting. And then you're like, let's go on a date. And then you go on a date and you ask more questions and you get curious. And then at some point, right, Casey and I were like, we found each other so fascinating and interesting through our curiosity of knowing each other. We're like, let's do this forever. Okay. So then we get married. And if you don't know our marriage story, we have not always had a happy marriage. By year 3, we hated each other.
Yep.
We had completely disconnected, fallen out of love, living like roommates. I mean, every red flag.
More like enemies.
Yeah. I mean, every red flag, everything that could have been bad was in our marriage. It was really bad. We were unhealthy people. And I went to therapy by myself because he wouldn't go. And I was sitting at the therapist's office and I'm sitting there and I'm telling her all these things. My husband does this and my husband does that. I don't even know how long I talked, probably 30 minutes. And I remember her saying like, well, why do you think he's mad at you? And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, well, why do you think that you guys have fallen out of love? I mean, you used to be in love. And I was like, I don't know. My first homework assignment was to get curious from my therapist. That's what actually changed our marriage. Like it literally, I started getting curious about him and going, okay, I obviously don't know him like I thought I knew him.
Yeah.
And getting curious really allowed me to open up my mind and open up my heart to like, I'm going to learn who this man is. And maybe he was that guy when we were dating and maybe he's changed. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And I got curious and I had this hunger to learn about me, about him, why our marriage is at where it's at. And that curiosity, if you can become curious in your marriage, it is a gift to your relationship.
So the quick way to find connection with your spouse is by asking open-ended questions. Studies and research show that the number one way to build emotional connection and closeness and intimacy is by asking open-ended questions. And this is exactly what we did when we first met. It's what you did when you first started dating your spouse. And there's this attraction and desire to get to know each other that fueled your ability to ask great questions. However, Over time, the novelty wears off.
Yep.
And we start asking boring questions like,
or the same questions.
How was your day? What's for dinner? Can we have sex?
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about curiosity, desire, fuels asking great open-ended questions.
Absolutely. Well, and I think great open-ended questions really unlocks a deeper connection. And unlike yes or no questions, which are going to be like, oh, what do you like, whatever. These are really bigger questions that start with like, tell me more, or how, or why, or what, because it's going to unlock so many different conversations, and it can go multiple ways. It's going to extend the conversation. So rather than just being a yes or no response, an open-ended question really does bring about multiple conversations. It can go multiple ways. And I think the problem with this is after a long day, like you said, the novelty wears off. You're just doing life together. You're in a routine, or you're just tired. It's not that you don't want to ask great questions. I think we all want to do that. We all want to get to know our spouse more. We can't come up with them. And it's really hard to find new creative questions after a long day of work or after a long day with the kids.
If you've stayed home with the kids, you're at decision fatigue. If you've been working all day, there's a lot of things and interactions that are happening. So by the time we get home at 5 p.m.,
it's
trying
what's
to
for dinner.
scare up dinner for the kids, it's like,
how was your day? Yeah, how was work? It's the same stuff, and we want you to break out of that. We want you to use the 30 date night bonus questions you got, and just check out the next 30 days. Ask a question a day. Do it in the car, over dinner, on a walk, over the phone, FaceTime. A lot of military couples or first responder couples that can't always be together will just literally call each other and go through one of the questions over the phone. It doesn't have to be in person. Of course, it's ideal in person. It could even be right before you go to bed. You just ask the question and just watch the conversation spark. And I think having these conversation starters really is the tool that every single couple can benefit from.
The second thing we want to talk about is intentionality. What does intentionality mean? That's a big word. It speaks to the quality and direction of our mental state. So, are we being purposeful with our life, or are we allowing life to carry us away? Are we living proactively or reactively? Do we have direction in our life, or are we just on autopilot? I think this is important. Do you feel empowered to change your life? Or do you feel like you're a victim of circumstances?
Wow.
Being intentional sets direction for our lives. It sets us in a path, okay? Now, so for example, let's talk about intentionality. If I want to improve my physical health, I don't just magically appear on a treadmill.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No. I've got to schedule it. I've got to lace up my shoes. I got to drive to the gym. I got to get my workout shake going. Like, there are plans that I put into place. There's intention.
Yeah.
Okay? If I want to win in my career and be successful and rich, well, I have to do something about that. I have to create a plan, make the calls, apply for the right position, make the sales call, right? There's intention.
Yeah.
If I want to succeed in my marriage, I have to be intentional. It does not just, a great marriage doesn't just descend upon you like a dove.
It doesn't happen by accident.
It doesn't happen.
It's literally like daily intentionality of showing up and really being purposeful. And I think a lot of couples find themselves very reactive, right? Like they're just going along life. Then something big happens. And this is why the average couple waits 6 years to go to therapy, is they're being responsive. They're being reactive versus being proactive.
So you have to create time.
Yes.
You have to create space. You have to calendar it. You have to block it. You have to prioritize it. You have to find resources to help you build a successful marriage. That's intention. So I remember when I really wanted to impress Megan when I asked her to marry me. So talk about intention and purpose.
You did a good job, by the way.
Well, I wanted to make an impression.
You did.
I booked us dinner reservations. I had Megan's friend pre-positioned where I was going to ask her to marry me so she could record it. I even threw a surprise engagement party. Very confident she was going to say yes.
I know. Afterwards, I was like, what would you have done if I said no? All these people were at your house. Yeah.
There was a lot of
intention.
planning that went into a moment that we will never forget.
Yeah. It's attractive
Intention.
when your spouse is intentional.
Correct.
And here's what I want to say. You used to be intentional. Maybe you still are. Everybody was. Because if your spouse that you dated 5 years ago, 15 years ago, 50 years ago wasn't intentional, there would have never been a second, third, or fourth date.
Yeah.
Like you would have been so turned off. You've been like, they didn't plan anything, or, oh, we had plans and they didn't show up. I mean, that's the thing. We were intentional when we were dating. And so you have that skill set, which means you can still get it back.
Mm-hmm.
So why do we become less intentional when we're married, right? And I want to start off by saying this. Rarely do we see couples intentionally being less intentional, okay? I mean, it really doesn't. It's not like we're waking up going, gosh, you know what? Today, I'm just not going to make effort in my relationship.
You know, I'm going to be lazy on purpose.
Like we're not doing that. No, we get busy. We get comfortable. We get distracted with phones, TV, social media, right? We become parents and our children need us for everything. We go on autopilot. We just kind of go through the motions of life. We don't really find resolution to our conflict. And so making an effort just doesn't feel worth it because there's pain under the surface. And I think too, there's a lack of just knowing how to be intentional, a lack of tools. And so, you know, we're not being intentional by being unintentional. Like, you know, it's silly. It's like, wait, but when we're not intentional, I know you're doing it unintentionally, but when you're not being intentional, there's this disconnection. It just happens. Yeah. And then we're not as close as we used to be. And that's where the loneliness starts to breed.
And I think everyone intentionally gets married and they set a direction to say, plot a course for happily ever after.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is how subtle and how easily we get that 1 or 2 degrees off.
Yeah.
And I think there was something like if you were setting off for a sailboat from Los Angeles to Hawaii, and you were 2 degrees off, you'd miss the Hawaiian Islands by over 200 miles.
Yeah, you'd be so far off.
Because just given the 1 or 2 degrees off and then time and moving in that direction. So,
and I think that's a great analogy for marriage. I think that that's what happens. We don't intentionally mean to be off. We get off, and if we don't pay attention, this is your wake-up call, which is why we're glad you're watching this video. Are you busy? Are you in a child-centered marriage? You know, do you have unresolved conflict? Like, pay attention to these things because you used to be intentional. You used to be curious, and somehow every couple, even Casey and I, can find ourselves 1 or 2 degrees off. Some couples, it's more degrees off. And there's got to be that course correction or there will never be that true connection.
Unresolved conflict. That will definitely kick your compass over 2 or 3 degrees over. If you don't get that, you will...
It will catch up to you eventually.
And almost by not being intentional, you're intentionally harming your relationship. Because it's almost, again, it's not what you do for your relationship, it's what you're not doing in the relationship. You're not living on purpose. You're not being proactive in your relationship, which is probably why you'd find yourself in a place of being disconnected, which a lot of couples do. You know, being intentional requires kind of the same ingredient out of curiosity, and that's desire. And if you're finding yourself at a place where you just don't desire that, here's why I want to challenge you to make a courageous decision. If you want to create something meaningful, you have to work at it. If you want to create something that's great, you have to build it. And I want to bring you back to that moment on your wedding day where you committed a promise. You made a promise to each other that in the good times and the bad times, in sickness and in health, for rich or for poor, no matter what comes our way, I'm going to love you for as long as we both shall live. That is a very beautiful moment. And that is a moment that was very meaningful. And so a little known fact is I officiate weddings. I've officiated over 1,000 weddings.
Think about how many photo albums, like wedding albums he's in. A lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm in a lot of wedding albums.
And wedding videos. That's probably too, yeah.
I've held a lot of
diamonds.
Diamonds in my hands.
Lucky you.
Yeah, that's right. If I could have kept them all.
Yeah.
One of my favorite moments in leading a couple in their wedding is the vows. And it's a moment that I actually stop everything and to say, hey, this is the most important thing. In fact, the reason why family and friends have gathered together, if you think about what a wedding is about, they are gathering together to celebrate that the couple is committing to each other, which means the vows are the very centerpiece of your wedding day. And you made a promise. It wasn't worthless. Those weren't cheap words you threw out. They were words of intention. They were words that you, at that moment, desired to give a promise. And so when I think about intentionality and when couples just kind of feel deflated, frustrated, and whatnot, I go, listen, marriage is not for the weak or for the faint of heart. Marriage, again, you want to create a team. You want to create something that is a beautiful legacy for your kids. It means you got to have to dig deep. You're going to have to dig deep and say, it's time to be an adult. It's time to live out the promises I made to my partner. So let's get real practical. What does it look like inside of marriage? Well, first of all, you have to make time.
Shocking, I know, but it's true. You have to make time.
I mean, these are simple principles.
Yeah.
But
it's hard to do when you're busy.
Hard to do. Hard to do when you're busy. Hard to do if you don't want to. Yeah. But you have to make time. Okay. It is not going to happen by accident. Yeah. Hope is not a strategy. Okay. If you fail to plan to fail. Right? You have to block time. You have to schedule it. You have to prioritize it. And
for us, it's a very practical thing where we sit down on Sunday nights and we do a weekly marriage business meeting. And we look at our week and we make sure that part of our week, we go through calendars and meal plans and schedules and things like that. But we're like, when are we going to spend time together? Like Casey and Megan, husband and wife, not like, because we work together. So we already spend a lot of time together. But I'm saying, like, how are we going to spend time together? Casey and Megan, not of Casey and Megan of Marriage 365, you know? And your calendar is a reflection of who you care about, what you value in your life. If you look at your calendar and your spouse isn't on your calendar, then you don't really value them. You have to make that. And let me tell you, if you have time to watch sports every Saturday all day long, you have time for your spouse. If you have time to scroll on social media, you have time for your spouse. If you have time for all these other little things that don't at the end of the day really do matter, you have time for your spouse, and it's being intentional. And then your calendar will reflect, wow, I've made time for my spouse. And then of course, as you make time to connect, like you did when you were dating, you will feel that connection and you will not have any more loneliness in your relationship.
All right. So intentionality is about setting a direction, having a plan, having purpose, but then bonus points, it is then finding resources and tools to help you accomplish your goal. Okay. Little known fact, when Megan and I first started out on this journey of trying to help couples, we were like, what should we call ourselves? And I remember going, well, because we're all about being proactive, we should be called intentional marriages. And we both.
And I was like, boring. That sounds boring.
As soon as I said that, I was like, oh, that's a mouthful.
Like it's true, but it sounds boring.
But that was the whole purpose behind like what we wanted to do is we want to create tools and resources for couples
so
to become intentional in their marriage. And I was like, intentional marriage. She's like, and Megan's like, you mean like 365 days a year? And all of a sudden, we both looked at each other.
And I was like, marriage
365.
No, we didn't say it at the same time. I said marriage 365. I have to give myself credit. It was my idea.
All right.
And you're like, okay, that's rad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So there you go.
Okay. So then fast forward, we're marriage 365. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're known for these connecting questions, asking open-ended questions. I'm like, what if we had a book that was called 365 Connecting Questions for Couples? And he's like, babe, that's brilliant. And so I'm so glad that we wrote this book. And I'm so glad that you're going to get a copy of this book because it will transform your entire relationship if you use it. And I think what I love seeing is that husbands love this because they're I can do this. Like the therapy idea and like the talking about feelings idea. Not that all men are like that, but there's hesitancy. And marriage books are often very geared for females. And we were like, no, I'm writing a book that even dudes would be like, okay, I like that. Like I could do this, right?
What's awesome though, babe, and you've pointed this out several times. I love this. Is this gives you quick wins in your marriage?
Yeah.
Quick wins.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's motivating, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about it. Because we can give you a 100% guarantee that you're going to get these things.
100%.
You ready? Connection. Deep, meaningful connection and friendship.
Laughter and fun. I mean, marriage cannot just be all work and no play. It should be enjoyable. And we want to see more couples having fun.
Yep. You will experience more sexual intimacy.
Ooh.
Couples who are connected out of the bedroom have more sex. It's a fact.
Oh, you're going to experience healing. These quick wins are going to help you heal these past wounds so you don't get stuck.
I think, too, you're going to experience higher levels of trust. I mean, you know me. I know you. We're safe for each other. We can rely on each other. And we're talking about the things that really matter.
And it gives you momentum. It motivates you to keep going, keep trying, and not to give up when times are tough. So how do we know this works? Well, science and research show that the number one way to build emotional intimacy, closeness, trust in a relationship is by asking open-ended questions, right? Because you're being curious and you're being intentional. It's crazy to think that we self-published this book back in 2018. And I remember we had this goal, like if we ever sold 5,000 copies in our lifetime, that would be successful. And we were shocked when within 6 months, we had sold over 10,000 copies into 72 different countries. And to date, we've sold over 100,000 copies. And it's crazy to hear all of these stories come back to us where people are coming back to buy multiple copies.
For their friends, their family, their,
wedding gifts. Yeah.
And the stories of we were separated and we're together, or this was a wedding gift that I got. I'd never even heard of you guys. And I felt like it really established us as a couple in our marriage.
Yeah. So here's a video of a couple who bought the book when they were hurting and then used it to rebuild trust and connection. Obviously, it's got some mileage on it. They've bought over 50 books for all their friends. They give it as gifts because they know it works. And now they've attended couples retreats, and now they're good friends of ours. And now we're super excited to have Penguin Random House come alongside us. They captured our vision and our goal for this book, and they're able to take it further than we could ever do that. So,
because I think that every single couple, married and non-married, should have a copy of this book.
That's right. This is a valuable tool.
Now, you're not going to receive your book until December 3rd, but in the meantime, you've got some great resources, okay? You've got the 30 date night bonus questions we want you to use that are going to give you the whole vibe of what you're going to get in the book, okay? You've got your romance revival bundle, okay? How to beat bedroom boredom. And then we've got a couple worksheets in there. There's something called Sexy Loveless and also like a fun Mad Libs Wild Night Fantasy activity to do together. And then, of course, you've got this masterclass, which you will have lifetime access to. Come back and watch this again if you need that little pick-me-up.
Now you may be thinking, Casey and Megan, this is amazing. I want to give this gift of connection to others in my life. Maybe you want to add this to your Christmas presents this year. Maybe you're part of a small group and you want to make sure everybody gets a book. Or maybe you're part of a work team and you want to get this valuable tool in the hands of others. Well, we've got some exciting opportunities to go deeper and experience Marriage 365 and work directly with Megan and I in a whole new way.
So for example, if you wanted to buy 5 books for your friends, we're going to offer an exclusive group coaching session with Casey and myself, and we can do deep dive issues that you might be facing. We'll actually have a place for you to submit your questions ahead of time, and it's going to be an incredible opportunity.
If you wanted to get 20 books, maybe for your small group or all of your friends and family as Christmas presents, then we're going to add a 2-hour sex and intimacy workshop, uncovering the core principles of couples that are getting it on based on the research we've done with over 2,000 couples.
Now, if you want to go crazy, and you want to get 50 books, then not only are you my hero for giving the gift of the connection to so many people, but you're also going to get that group coaching, the 2-hour sex workshop, but also lifetime access to our Marriage 365 membership. We've never offered this before. We'll never offer this again. So this would be an incredible, incredible thing.
Now hold up, Megan. If someone wanted to buy 150 books, that's probably one really influential person.
I would want to meet that person.
Well, That's exactly what we're going to do, because we're going to meet you personally And you're going to be invited to as our VIP guest of honor for our couples retreat in October 2025.
Aww.
We're going to have so much fun together.
I love that. And our retreats are like nothing you've ever heard or experienced before. They sell out every year. So if you're already thinking about coming to our retreat, this is the time to come. What I want you to do is I want you to go to the link marriage365books.com/book to learn more. And of course, send us an email at help@marriage365.com if you have any questions. Again, let's give the gift of connection, because connecting with your spouse, not to be cheesy, but there's nothing better than connecting with your spouse.